Hey guys, Robert here, and today I'm going to be talking about Red versus Blue Restoration. Now, since this is one of the first times I'm talking about it, some of you probably wondering, Red versus Blue? Well, you guys know I talked about Ruby, so those of you probably know that that's connected to Rooster Teeth. In fact, Red versus Blue was the very first thing Rooster Teeth did. In fact, the notion of Rooster Teeth comes from what's in it. Rooster Teeth cock bite. Get it? Yeah. Wait. Sorry. Yuck. Don't you hate when that happens? But anyway, so Red vs. Blue has been around for years. And it's fittingly enough, this movie I'm talking about, Red vs. Blue Restoration, isn't it kind of fitting? It was the Red vs. Blue was the first thing Rooster Teeth did, and now it's the very last thing Rooster Teeth is releasing. And yeah, and this fortunately, this was always meant to be the finale for Red vs. Blue itself. Fortunately, it's not a case where it's like, oh, it's gonna end here, but we could have done more. No. This gets finality, and it absolutely does. Basically, okay, let me talk a bit about Red vs. Blue. Red vs. Blue has been a machinima. For those of you who don't know, machinima is basically what happens when you use video games to tell a story. Usually like multiplayer, you have a camera guy watching it, and thanks to Halo having a bit of a glitch where if you have the gun pointing all the way down, you can then have it, instead of having your head go down, it comes back up, and then you can have it bob up and down. Makes it look like they're talking like, hey, yeah, you ever wonder why we're here? One of life's great mysteries, isn't it? Stuff like that. And they would always have their guns down and everything as they're bobbing up and down. This became so popular, especially thanks to Rooster Teeth, that eventually when they did Halo 2, they made it a feature for machinimas. Now, it's an option, obviously, but they would make it be an optional feature for those who wanted to keep on doing it. Because Bungie and then later 343 Industries knew they have fans. That will piss off the fans, and it's just a little thing they could add in there. So kept going. But yeah, it was what game? Of course, Halo. I should have mentioned it. It's Halo. And basically, Red vs. Blue started off, was meant to be a 5-episode limited series. Just tell a few jokes and then end. You had Bernie Burns, Jeff Ramsey, Gus Sorrell, and Matt Hullum. All of them good friends, worked together. They had their own jobs, but eventually went off and formed Rooster Teeth. And then web videos became their job until recently again. But anyway, and thus they decided they created again this web series where they took this whole capture the flag, these two bases, a red team and a blue team. And now normally in the game they would be all red and all blue, but here there are different types of colors that match that red and blue. You have blue, you have solid blue, which is the character Caboose. You have aqua, all that. Red, you have red for Sarge. You have orange, you have maroon, you have pink. It's not pink, it's light as red. Running gag. Things like that. And it started off purely comedic. Now, of course, with some interesting dialogue and everything, but mostly it was a joke. And it lasted for 100 episodes of what was known as the Blood Gulch Chronicles, where it mostly took place there. Now, they would progress the engine from Halo 1 to Halo 2, although they stupidly had to be, we're in the future. And they've since then, that was too convoluted. We're not even going to acknowledge it. And from there, it basically, for 100 episodes, you started to get this underlying. You were introduced to new characters. One of the fan favorites, Tex, Agent Texas, from a group called Project Freelancer, this badass kicking woman with a bad attitude and a connection to, on the blue team. I should mention, on the blues, you have Leonard Church, the leader. A bit of has a bit of a temper, everything. You have Caboose. Fluctuating for a while, he's completely brain dead and stupid. Then eventually just more like bumbling stupid. But yeah, that's who he is. And you have Tucker, the ladies' man type of guy who's always wanting to bang, hope there's chicks so he can bang, things like that. But as the series goes on, can also be a competent fighter. You have those three. On the Reds, you have on Sarge, the leader, this gruff leader, right? Ladies, front and center on the double, things like that. You know, this type of guy who's always like, oh, those pesky blues, those, only good blue is a dead blue. We are red and they're blue, and that means they're the bad guys. Stuff like that. Crazy guy, but well-meaning. Then you have Griff. Griff. This lazy guy who's like, Sarge, do I have to? Things like that. But in fact, to the point where some of the artwork, even though because of machinima, they all look the same body types, but most people say he's big, fat, and everything. Then you have Simmons. He's the kiss-ass, like, oh, yes, sir, whatever you say, sir, and this nerd and all that, but not a bad character. Then you also get Donut, this first, again, normal guy, but after he had a grenade on his face that blew up in his face, long story, he eventually became this, like, hey, guys, how's it going? Like, he's gay without being gay. This very effeminate, like, oh, the feng shui, like, you would mistake him for gay, even though, again, nothing's ever confirmed, but it's very flamboyant is what I will say. And, and then you eventually introduce the kids, like I said before, of Agent Texas, Church's ex-girlfriend, things like that, which introduced the Project Freelancer. Then we were introduced to characters like Wyoming and a few others, York, so on. We also get Griff's sister, named Sister, later known as Kakanya Griff, but oh boy, she's the slut. So basically the joke was the voice actress Rebecca Fraser would keep saying all the most bad shit stuff crazy, and they decided, what won't she say? And she had almost no limits. So thus it became the most absurd thing will come out of Sister's mouth. But yeah, for the first 100 episodes, it was all in there, and eventually it was all about dealing with Tex and her evil AI, and the evil Omega. Although when he's in the body of this, Doc, the medic who shows up, Doc is this kind of nibbish kind of guy, like, oh, I'm a pacifist, things like that. Of course, when he has Omega in him, he's all like, yes! But yeah, eventually they come about dealing with Omega, things like that, and then it wraps up by episode 100. But it didn't stop there. They kept going, and eventually they would do what would be the Recollection trilogy as hold on, let me double check. I got that. It's been a while. I don't remember the exact season name. So you had Reconstruction, where they reconstructed. Basically the whole point of Blood Gulch deconstructed Halo. Reconstruction reconstructs it, adds more context, and makes some reveals. Like we've been knowing about AIs, but we find out Church was an AI this whole time. We never knew. But for a while, we always thought he was a ghost and he would jump into other people's bodies. No, he's an AI who would take over their bodies. And then we have Recreation and Revelations. Those were the three of the Recollection trilogy, which again built up the stuff. We found out, again, Church with this AI known as the Alpha, and you have all these other fragments of him. Of which we also find out Tex was one of them as well. You'd have all these fragments. You'd have Epsilon, which was memory. Memory is the key, a running phrase. You have Sigma, very evil and everything, just like Omega. You'd have so many of these other AIs and everything. And we eventually find out that they would work together in this one, unfortunately, I known as Agent Maine. Freelancer was named after states. And they would be known as the Meta, because they're trying to reach metastasis. AI's becoming, almost fully aware. And they think if they remerge together, they can reach that. Hence the name the Meta. Then they get taken out, so Meta's on its own, and he's trying to regain the Epsilon, which was the memory. That survived and becomes the new Church. So you had the original Church and then Epsilon Church. This gets convoluted, I know. And then eventually, it would then lead into a Project Freelancer saga, where we both dealt with stuff in the present day. In season 9, it's all about Epsilon Church reliving a lot of what happened in Blood Gulch, but not perfectly, and it goes its own way. But the flashbacks is where we find out about how Operation Freelancer was how it fell apart, how, we were also introduced to Agent Carolina, this badass woman who's always trying to do all she can to be the top of the leaderboard, things like that. And you had the director of Freelancer. And basically, he put everyone through hell, and they would eventually turn on each other. And that was the big thing between 9 and 10. Where then by 10, we also have in the present day, Carolina meeting up with, another agent we were introduced to, Agent Washington. Really good guy, probably one of they consider him the worst of the freelancers, but still a very competent fighter. And basically, he and Carolina work with the Reds and Blues to try and bring down Freelancer once and for all. And again, meanwhile, we're getting the flashback to flesh out the story, and basically we find out here's the whole picture. The director of Freelancer had lost his wife. She was in, when she was in the military, got killed during the Great War, which was the events of Halo. At least that's what it was believed. And he just went into his work. He tried to recreate her. And he tried to make a new advanced AI but he only had access to one. So he based off his memories, but because of his memory for his wife was so strong, we had a byproduct. You'd have the alpha and beta. Beta was his wife, which would become Tex. Unfortunately, though, for her, because the memories were based off of her and she died, no matter how badass she is, no matter how awesome she is, she can kick ass, but the moment she gets to her end goal and her goals in her reach, she will always lose. No matter what. Even if it's a long-term thing, by the time she reaches it, something's going to go wrong. No matter what, she's always going to lose. It's a flaw of hers. Which tells you they put a lot of thought into all this. Then, but then the director would then, because he only had the one AI, he decided, I'm going to fragment them. Make them reach their peak of an emotion and separate it, and thus creating those different fragments from the alpha, the original. And that's when we get all these different fragments and everything. And each would be given to, or at least the plan was to give them to each of the other freelancers that they were training. Things didn't go well, fell apart. Meadow went rogue, Maine went rogue. Also, we find out, though, that Carolina was the daughter of Allison and the director. Allison being the original name of Tex. And she's been having this rivalry with Tex and never know she was having a rivalry with her own mother this whole time. But yeah, Tex off the board. Even Church even says eventually, I forget you, to move on and everything. And, I should also point out about Caboose. Caboose, lovable idiot, but always feel like Church is my best friend in the whole world. Things like that. And basically then, but of course, when Church was taken out, the Alpha Church was taken out, he's the one who recreates Church as the Epsilon Church. And then from there, I just want to bring that up because that's important later. And we also find out the Reds and Blues were just simulation troopers. Their original plan was freelancers would go there and kill them through simulations to test them and everything. But they kept operating on their own and things went a different way. But yeah, by the end of it all, Freelancer's gone. The director kills himself through suicide. And Carolina's learned to move on, and Wash has learned to move on, and they've just moved on. And that was Bernie Burns' last work on Red vs. Blue for the most part. His last main story arc. Then we have seasons 11 to 13, which is when Miles Luna, one of the guys who would eventually work on Ruby, would come on, called the Chorus Trilogy, which was basically take the Reds and Blue and put them in a real conflict. That has nothing to do with Freelancer, well, initially, and see how they deal with all of this. And it was just as good. Very strong writing, really matched the characters and everything. And then by the end of it, we find out that Epsilon had been creating, just to help him work, fragments, like basically replications of the different fragments. He already did it with Tex when he brought her, because he brings her back at one point. So it's called Epsilon Beta. He would make Epsilon versions of the other AIs. Again, they're just his memories, representations of them. But then we would find out then that the guy who was funding and overseeing the the freelancer above the director. The chairman, he's a bad guy. And he becomes he's the main threat. He's taking this planet called Chorus and having the two sides fight each other while he's taking it, trying to wipe him out so then he can claim this planet for himself because it has a bunch of ancient alien tech that he can utilize and then market and sell off and everything. And of course, the Reds and Blues are going to try and stop him and throw a wrench in everything. But the important part of this is by the end of it, they're stuck in a room. The bad guys about to there, but they reveal that the director has the Maine's armor. Maine had died earlier on by the Reds and Blues. But yeah, they had his armor. And so Tucker, who's become a badass and the main leader by this point, puts it on. But then Epsilon is basically like reveals to the audience anyway that no, he can't power it himself. But his idea is delete himself and then leave, have all the AIs function for it. And theoretically then, they'll kick ass, take them down, and then be able to survive. That's then, and then season 4, and then it ends there. Season 14 then ended up being an anthology because Miles is moving on to Ruby and they want to figure someone who could take over. And eventually they did. And, but yeah, so 14 was an entire anthology, bunch of stories, some just random, some that were prequel stuff, things like that. But eventually we led to know as the Shizno trilogy, where things went off the rails, got very cosmic, stuff that didn't really fit. A lot of the characterization, the writing wasn't the strongest. It wasn't bad, but nowhere near as good as the first 13 seasons. And it kind of faltered and fell apart. Then you had season 0, which focused on an entirely new team, and most people hated it. They hated it. It felt like this isn't it at all. And then from 2020, that was the last we had seen much of Red vs. Blue. Until now, where Bernie decides to come back and tell the story and give a send-off to the story. And Matt would return as director and everything. And this will be the first time they'd be utilizing Halo Infinite as opposed to the first 5 games and everything. And they would be using the machinima stuff. 0 was the first one that didn't use any machinima, but they've gone back to that. And basically, what we find out is that everything after season 13 and 14, that's the anthology, so the entire Shizno trilogy and 0 never happened. We find out that it was all simulations by Epsilon before he deleted himself. Because, AI operates much faster, time slows down, so he can go through a whole bunch of computations. So all of it was just possibilities of things that could happen afterwards, which would explain why things go really off the rails and everything. And thus, now we're seeing now, of course, there's a line in the movie that seems to, that implies that, oh, maybe this is another simulation, the others are the real deal. Who can say? But going into this as if this is the real timeline and all the other stuff's been retconned out of existence, which, if you ask me, I think is for the better. That's what we're going into for this. And after about 20 minutes of summarizing, sorry about that, but come on. It's been over 20 years already, this whole company and the series, so kind of fitting, leading right here into this movie. And it basically, it's cleaning up all the stuff with Freelancer and everything. We find out, okay, during the Shizno trilogy, we find out, oh yeah, the AIs powered the suit, but then died out. It was limited. It didn't last long. So the suit, so this was a way of explaining why Tucker doesn't have this badass suit and everything, why he's back to his original armor and everything, which I get it, convenient for that. But then you realize they missed out on an important thing. The main villain of the meta was the AI Sigma, which was the ambition and everything, and voiced by Elijah Wood in season 10, I should point out. Not here, though. Miles would be voicing him here. And yeah, in this version, we find out, yes, they survived. They fought and got out of, away from Charon. That was the name of the chairman's company and its forces. But it turns out then Sigma takes over. So the new meta, and poor Tucker is now, the new meta. So he's going out there. But you think, oh, but Epsilon's gone. How can they reform without Epsilon? Well, it turns out, while Epsilon did delete himself, obviously, for them to be separated, he left a small fragment enough. Nothing enough to really operate on his own. We'll get to explain that. But enough that they could reform together if they get that portion of it. But what is this portion? But wait, we're going to see this Epsilon interact with everyone. It's the whole oh, I knew you were going to say that type of, trope. The whole oh, I prepare for almost any eventualities that you would answer. Except for Caboose. I cannot predict anything from Caboose. I'm talking to all the Reds. Reds, because he figured Tucker's going to be gone. Anyone else that might be there, I can ask it to you. Caboose? Nope. He's too random. I cannot do that. Although, he does have a program for every few moments. Shut up, Caboose! Okay. Things like that. And they realize they gotta stop Meta. They gotta stop Tucker and everything. They have to find some way to do it. And this is all a movie, an hour-and-a-half movie that's wrapping things up. So yeah, they convince them, Sarge goes along with it and everything, and they have a run-in with the Meta, of course. And it turns out they were trying to capture it with an AI unit that would take out the AIs from him, but they are no match. Basically, this version of the Meta is even tougher than the original one because Karan put in information from everyone, even the other bad guys they dealt with during these other freelancers, bounty hunters they dealt with during the Chorus trilogy. It has everyone in there and everything. And then during the scuffle, Sarge gets killed. And set up trying to protect Caboose, which you're like, but he's a stinking blue. Shows his character development that by this point, after everything they've been through, it don't matter if he's blue or red. Caboose is a member of the family, and he saves him. But thanks to the energy sword that Tucker's had, long story there, but that's what he used. He stabs right through Sarge, through the ship, and yeah, he dies. He passes on leadership to the Simmons before he passes. And it's a strong moment. He just says his farewells to everyone and everything. And after that, they then realize we need to have a final fight with him, with Meta. But Simmons, now in charge, he doesn't want to force Griff to do it. He knows Griff has been wanting to leave, so he does something that Sarge would never do. He discharges Griff. Paperwork signed and everything. You can leave. You don't have to deal with this. Of course, Griff's I'll do it after we're done, if we survive. Telling you that he's still good enough friends with Simmons and Caboose to do it. But at the same time, we find out Wash has been in a hospital recovering after the events of the season 13, and he's been talking with Doc, but something's a bit off. We'll be getting to that. But and Carol, sorry about that. No idea what happened. It just flickered and then turned off. But as I said, yeah, Wash is in a hospital talking with Doc, but people act like he's a bit crazy. Again, we'll get to that. But yeah, the final fight's going to be happening on Blood Gulch. Fitting. But Caboose, talking with Epsilon Church's stuff, there's a plan. Use a memory unit and talk into it through the Epsilon fragment and try and recreate the memories, like what Church and Caboose did to make Epsilon Church. Try and bring him back. This was Church's plan. Bring him back through it. They have another robotic body. And basically that is the plan. So he and the Red and Simmons and Griff sit around a campfire, reminiscing about the old days, everything from season 1 onward. They just talk around the campfire while the memory unit is nearby, picking up the information, gathering it, and adding it to the AI. And So again, throughout all this, we're saying they're going to try and bring back Church. Meanwhile, then and then they start to get ready and everything for when Meta shows up. Obviously, he's kicking their asses. At least Simmons and Griff kicking their butts royally. All the while, then the AI and the memory unit starts to react with Caboose, who's happy that this is working. And all this, Caboose is telling us another story. And you realize he's talking about first he's talking about the director, but you realize he's talking about text and everything. And at the same time, Wash and Doc is showing up there, and Wash realizes he can't do much to help except get hurt because their suits have these emergency beacons. Get hurt, trigger it, because he's trying to bring Carolina there to help out because he knows I can't deal with the meta, but Carolina can. Then, at the same time, we find out it wasn't Church that Caboose was bringing back. He brought back Tex. And what makes this work so well is they got her original voice casting Gulch, who had left on pretty bad terms with Rooster Teeth. So to see her back was amazing. They had replaced her as Glinda in Ruby. So you're thinking like, oh, they're going to get that voice? No, they brought her back. And we get to see her fight against the meta. And then Carolina shows up, and we finally get the moment. We've seen the two fight each other, but we get to see the two fight together. And it's not the greatest fight because they don't have much time to work on it, but it works still nonetheless. And yeah, they're fighting each other and everything. Shenanigans are still happening around them. But then it leads to Tex being pinned. Sigma's taunting her, pointing out about how you are the memories of a man who's, you're always failure. It'd be so funny if it wasn't so annoying, things like that. But then Tex reveals, I'm not his memories. I'm their memories. And their memories of me is always kicking their ass, which shows she is no longer dealing with that crutch, as she's able to fight off, and it's a good throw from Simmons, is able to throw him the memory unit, use it, capture the AIs all into this unit, herself and Church included, all put in there. We have a nice moment of her and Epsilon saying, hey, we'll be in this together, showing they're going to be together. No forgetting each other. We're getting a nice, happy moment with them. Tucker is doing fine. He's recovering. We then find out that Doc had died. And the Doc we've been seeing from Wash has been his memories, an imaginary friend of his, which then leads to a nice moment of having some of the others showing his memories of some of the other freelancers that he cared about appear as imaginary friends too, giving some nice farewells from some of the other actors. And we also find out Tex told Caboose a plan to deal with it, and that was smash the AI unit, destroying them all once and for all, bringing an end to this for good. No more AIs, no more nothing to do it. And while that's going to make Caboose sad, he can move on. And Coke and Carolina and all that, everyone's moving on. Griff's heading off. We get a nice little nod to Red for the Blue Zero. One of the characters, Agent 1, is there. We had also seen Dylan from the Shizno trilogy, a reporter. She appeared at the very beginning, somewhat a little different than how she was in there. But and yeah, so she again, little nods here showing what they are in this world properly. And things wrap up there. Griff heads off, says a nice farewell to everyone. And I do like it how he says, sorry about he says to Caboose, sorry about, the whole war stuff. Yeah, it's okay. You guys weren't very good at it. No, I don't think we were. And he heads off, and that's it. It's resolved. Wash is going to move on. Carolina's going to be there with him every step of the way to help her friend out. Simmons is now in command, and Griff's moving on. He doesn't, like he's been wanting to. Caboose is moving on. Everyone's moving on. And this was just damn good bringing finale. This felt like this truly wraps things up properly, for the most part. Was this perfect? No, definitely not. They're given ways this could have been to improve it. They could have been given more time, things like that. Apparently, it was going to be a lot shorter, so this was the extendedness. But they could have gotten a little bit more time, just a little bit. But I mean, especially the stuff was washed, fell a little off, and everything. But again, for what this was, this whole thing, this was a good farewell. Having everyone have moments, having nice nods, having Tex back, this awesome moment, having this here, resolving her story properly in a much more uplifting moment. And everything was church. Moving on, because it's everything after chorus. After chorus felt like that was a good ending point. But at the same time, though, you're like, they didn't know how to move on from it. And that's when they did the Shizno trilogy. Something just never felt right. It never felt, I mean, even when they ended with Singularity, yes, wrapped up the parts of that trilogy, decent endpoint there for them, but nowhere near as good as season 10's ending. And again, chorus was great, but that ending was also like, where it's the Pavilion Army ending, where you're like, are they gonna die? We don't know. That's part of why they did the anthology as well. And I said about Zero the better, obviously. But this here, yes, it's sad we lost Doc and Sarge. Both voiced by Matt Hullum, funny enough. But at the same time, this one felt like it brought closure, which we haven't had since season 10. This felt like this wrapped up a lot of points that could have been. Like, Shizno could have dealt with the AIs, because, you know, like, what would Sigma have done in the suit? Instead, again, they cheap it out and said, oh, it didn't last long, it died down, it's useless. Again, fair enough, they didn't want to make Tucker OP, but for this year felt like it was important. Back to the freelancer stuff, back to everything. Now, I wish we had more with Carolina, we had more with Tex. Again, they had a time limit and everything, I get it. So yeah, having it be the meta one more time, this copy of Sigma and Tucker of everything, making it, and this felt like a worthy fight, because the meta was always one of the best parts of the Recollection trilogy. So having him do it one more time, bringing everything back to Freelancer where it all started, ending it at Blood Gulch and everything. Yeah, this was a more fitting send-off, if you ask me. Also, they had brought back some other characters. You had Sister show up, her voice actress Rebecca had left the company, so having her back was awesome. You had a character I forgot to mention for a while, Sheila, the AI of the tank that the Blues have, and Caboose, one of Caboose's friends. She was also there, and she returns. We haven't seen her since, but another version of her for Freelancer called Phyllis. We haven't heard her actress since then, which was season 13. So yeah, having her actress back as Sheila the Tank was very good. So many other people had it. You have Miles voicing the Meta and Sigma. Obviously, they couldn't get Elijah Wood back. But again, having Kathleen back was great. So much of it felt like a good, this was for the fans. This was for the fans and to bring closure. And I should point out, like I said, it was a 4-year gap. So clearly they didn't have much interest in it, but the fact they went out of their way to say, let's do one more story and just bring it to an end. Now again, they didn't know that Rooster Teeth was going to shut down when they did this. So it's kind of, but at the same time, the fact they decided to bring this to a close one more time, I couldn't ask for better. The acting was very good and strong. The animation was a little, like, the fights, not the greatest. You don't have Monty, you don't have Tori in there. And again, they were on a bit of a time limit, so you couldn't do like a whole episode dedicated to a fight, none of that here. But for what we got, it was good still. Very good, very bittersweet, but after everything they've been through, there wasn't going to be a perfect happy ending. There never was. But for this, it's as good as it was going to get. And I can't think of anything else. So yeah, that was Red vs. Blue Restoration. Very good. Obviously, if you're not a fan, you're going to be lost, but there's enough you can understand. But yeah, there's Red vs. Blue still on YouTube last I checked. I think it is, all of the different seasons. go and watch that. There's archives out there for you guys to check out. The people have archived so much of the other seasons, obviously because of things shutting down. And I would check out the show. It's good. You might have questions about taste, especially because it goes back to 2003, so some things might be a little cringe and all that, but it is a good series, and I'm glad it ended on this note. Like I said, could have been better, yes, but for what we got, could have been so much worse. And especially given how Zero had been, and thus, but here, yeah, this was what the best we were ever gonna get. So yeah, thank you guys for joining in on me on this one, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.